argument against quranists. So let's just start from the beginning, right? So the prophet died in 632, and then right, Ali took over and he was the Khalifa in 661, right? So basically, what I'm trying to show you is this, right? The Quranists have the idea that the true Islam was lost at a certain period of time. So I want to show you that it's a very narrow gap where it could have been lost. So let's just start with the Khalifa of Ali, right? 661, he died. You can assume that in 661, the true Islam was not lost at that point, because let's just go. Actually, we can use the Quran itself to prove this, and let's try to do that. If my computer would just actually work. Uh, Pressing. Hold on, let's see. All right. So yeah, he died in 661. He was the Khalifa, and it says here in the Quran itself, Allah intends only to remove from you the impurity of sin, O people of the Prophet's household, to purify you with extensive purification. So you can assume through this verse that he probably didn't have the corrupt Islam during his time period, right? He lived very late. 661 is a pretty late time. So now the gap kind of narrows to where the true Islam is lost. Now let's go down to some of the companions, right? That's Ibn Abbas. He was the cousin of the Prophet, very close to him, and he's considered one of the Prophet made a hadith that he would have good tafsir, and he was close friends with Ali as well. And he lived in Hijaz, which is pretty close to Medina, and he visited Damascus. So in the end, look, he dies in 687. That's pretty late. You also have Ibn Umar, who dies in 693. He was Ibn Khattab's son, and he was a prominent authority in hadith and law. The point is, look, you have these people who died in very late, right? And I'll show you why I mean by late. So it kind of narrows the gap even more, right? He lived in Medina, just to show you, right? Or at least he was in Medina in the 680s. The point is, look, um, now the gap is even more narrow, and let's see. Look, so this is the first madhab, Malik ibn Anas. He was born just 20 years after Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar, just 20 years later. So now the gap where the true Islam is lost even smaller, right? 7 to 11. He's born, and he produces the first madhab, the first hadith book, and he believed that the Sunnah of Medina was the highest authority in Islam. Why? Because he believed that the Sunnah of Medina, because that's the major city of Islam, and a lot of the companions used to live there. That probably, if anything was wrong, the companions would have corrected it. You know what I mean? So he's assuming that that's a good city to take whatever they're doing is probably right, right? And you even have Ibn Umar who lived there, and you have the golden chain of narration, which is through Ibn Umar, who comes from the Prophet, the Hadith. Now, forget about Hadith. Just once again, you're assuming that the true Islam is lost. In this period between the time of Malik and the time of the Prophet, which isn't that long of a period. And then you also have Abu Hanifa, who's born even earlier, 699, just a few years. A few years out, like maybe 40 years after Ali, a few years after this guy, very early, right? Abu Hanifa, he was born in the city of Ali, right? So once again, you have the three major capitals of the Islamic caliphates, right? Is Kufa with Ali, right? And the first one is Medina, where the Prophet Abu Bakr and Umar established their caliphate. The capital was Medina, and then Ali moved it to Kufa, right, in Iraq. And you also have this guy who the Umayyads moved it to Damascus, and this guy was pretty close to that region. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is because all these cities are very, kind of far from each other, yet they all have, for the most part, agree upon the major essentials of the religion, and they have, they all practice the Sunnah, which is, something separate from the Quran. They all consider that to be authoritative. How did all three of them have the wrong idea? You know what I mean? And they lived so close, right? So close to the time of the companions and even the Prophet himself. You could assume that they probably, for the most part, have something similar to what he taught, because the companions, transferred it over to him. You know what I mean? Like here, like the Sunnah of Medina was transmitted culturally. Forget about even hadiths, right? Even though hadiths, you don't even have to use hadiths to argue with these people. Just ask them, why did these people practice these things? Why did they practice stuff that's outside of the Quran? Why did they consider that to be an authority, right? And why does so many hadiths come from this guy? How do did he just practice the wrong thing all this time? Was he teaching people fake stuff? You know what I mean? Ibn Abbas as well. And these people lived so close to these times. It would such a small, narrow gap, to assume when the true Islam was lost, if you understand what I mean. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, if something wasn't clear, you could just ask me.